let's just go into narcissism specifically then, since it's
Uh-huh.
existed since for all of
Always.
humanity.
All of humanity.
What are the telltale signs?
hmm So narcissism as a personality style is characterized by somebody who has variable empathy, entitlement, grandiosity, a need for admiration and validation. They are envious of other people. They think other people are envious of them. They're arrogant. They're selfish, superficial, vain. They think everyone wants to be like them, or they covet being like other people. Very materialistic, very controlling. They're very motivated by power and domination. Now, all of that's happening. That's
Sure.
like this big sphere of narcissism. What's at the core of this sphere? Insecurity, shame, vulnerability. And they want to view themselves as perfect. So all that regular people stuff, that's not going to work for them. So this stuff like the grandiosity and the arrogance and the entitlement, that's their suit of armor. And this idea of interpersonal vulnerability, oh, heck no, that's not happening for them. So they really come and muscle up in relationships. And so that's narcissism. And obviously, there's a million more subtleties than that.
Sure.
It's on a continuum, it's not an either or, it's not you're a narcissist or you're not. At the mildest ends on the spectrum of narcissism, you're talking about someone who's, again, more of this Instagram selfie, look at me, isn't my breakfast interesting? Aren't I pretty? Don't I have a cool car? Emotionally stunted and immature. They're probably not harmful, certainly not someone that you're going to have a very fulfilling long-term committed relationship with, not someone who's probably going to be a very healthy parent, but they're not harmful people, right? They're ridiculous in some ways. When you get to the highest end of the severity spectrum, now you're talking about more of a malignant narcissism, and you're almost like veering into territory that's like psychopathy. It's
Mhm.
not psychopathy is its own thing, separate, but in malignant narcissism, exploitation, coerciveness, deep levels of manipulation, isolation, cruelty. That's very different than
Yeah,
someone who's posting pictures of their breakfast in a bikini.
got it. Helpful. So, how do we understand the line? Because you're describing at one end of the spectrum someone who is largely a high achiever and is, as we are social animals, right? We do need to, in some ways, fit into the tribe. And I've always said you can't fit in and stand out at the same time. So, there seems to be some paradox here. I'm wondering if you can help us understand, maybe thin slice this a little bit. As does it mean
Mhm.
because you're on TV that you're a narcissist? Does it mean that because this show, for example, wants to highlight high performers, and high performers are probably from some trauma bonds they experienced in childhood, really doing everything they can to get attention? Where is the line? And is there some sort of, if that's a spectrum, is there another spectrum, which is the
Mhm.
health spectrum of peak performance, for example, or being an expert?
So you sort of asked two questions. The one is a thin slicing, almost looking at this evolutionarily as a species mandate. We're a social species. We exist in social groups. Human beings are not lone wolf hunters. We've always lived in tribal systems of somewhere between 100 and 150 people. It's how we share information. It's how we've always been. It's just, in fact, why I think we're struggling as a species right now. We're not living in that way. But we are hominid species, which is just one step away from a primate species. And primates are hierarchical. There are alphas. There are then people under that alphas. The alpha is a male designated, biologically male designated member of that particular tribe, troop, call it what you will. Same thing with human beings. There is an alpha structuring to human beings. Open a history book. They don't talk about the sweet baker or the kind miller or the angel of a blacksmith or the sweetie pie of a seamstress. They talk about the people who invaded and raped and pillaged and destroyed, and in some cases, innovated. But that's who we read about. I would guess 80% of the people in our history books are narcissistic,
Mm,
right? So they definitely are the people who make history. Unfortunately, because of that, so much of human history is the stories and the narrative of narcissistic folks, not of the ordinary bread baker or seamstress,
yes.
right? And it still is the case. Our leaders are mostly narcissistic. Our CEOs are narcissistic. Our celebrities are narcissistic. Most you flip through anything, most of the content by high, big, fancy, famous people, they're narcissistic. Okay, because in order to be playing at that level of playing field, there is a drive and a determination and a willingness to knock the other people out of the way to get there, because not everyone fits at the top of that pedestal.
Mm.
So this idea of how does this work evolutionarily? It works just fine evolutionarily for them, because they're creating lots of little genetic copies of themselves. They're ensuring their place in the reproductive hierarchy. They're fine. They're doing fine.